You know, you are not selfish in taking the time away from your business or your family to write the book. You are selfish if you don't.
Hello and welcome to Fierce and Flawless, the Female Project. I am Dr. Antonella Kaler, and I am on a mission to find out exactly what it takes to build an indestructible foundation and achieve our best reality. I am thrilled to bring you stories of inspiring women who were fierce and relentless when pursuing their passions, who did not blame their struggles on so-called character flaws, and who took control to lead extraordinary lives. If you're a woman who is tired of feeling like your life is merely a product of cause and effect, and you are ready to be the woman that causes the effect, keep listening to learn the necessary insights to navigate life's toughest challenges, break through the most disheartening plateaus, and unleash your inner alpha woman. Hello, Alphas, and welcome to another episode of Fierce and Flawless, the Female Project. Today, I had the privilege of talking to Lucy McCarraher, the co-founder and managing editor of Rethink Press. Lucy is an amazing, amazing woman. She has been a magazine and book editor and publisher, a print and TV journalist in Australia with her own program. She developed, wrote, and edited UK and international TV and video series, including Runaway Bay, then switched gears and became a national expert in work-life balance. She coached multinational and blue-chip companies, including Virgin and Microsoft. Oh, and she also wrote 11 published books. Just incredible. Lucy and I talk about her current passion, and that is helping women write books of their own to share their experiences and make a difference. Now, if you think that writing a book may not be for you, definitely listen to this episode and see why your story is important and needs to be shared, especially if you are a female entrepreneur or an expert in your given field. I had an eye-opening discussion and was very privileged to talk to a true alpha woman, Lucy McCarraher. Thank you so very much for joining us today. And where are you located?
So I'm in Norfolk in England, in the UK. I live in the country, so my nearest town is Norwich.
Oh, that's absolutely amazing. So if you could just tell our audience a little bit about yourself and Rethink Press and how you found your passion and how life has led you to do what you do today.
Okay, well, it's a story.
It's a loaded question, yeah.
It's a lot, yeah. So for some reason, I always wanted to be a writer. That was my ambition when I was little. And then when I kind of got into teenage years, I thought, actually, I'd rather like to, I'd like to act. So I had kind of two ideas that I wanted to write and I wanted to act. I got married very early, and I went to Australia. I went to live in Australia when I was 21 to finish my degree there, basically. But actually, what happened was that we started a publishing company to run a monthly Australian performing arts magazine, mostly theatre. So I kind of got into writing and publishing and stuff, and not actually acting, but being part of the theatre scene that way. So that was my first job, if you like, and that lasted about 7 or 8 years. We were in Sydney, and I discovered then, although I didn't really take account of it, but what the published word can do for you, because, I came out to Australia as a student pom, with no particular experience of Australia, let alone the performing arts scene there. And because I became the executive editor of this monthly magazine, which I must say people were crying out for, I sort of became a known expert on the subject of Australian theatre, and I was eventually given my own TV show, entertainment show, where I interviewed people like Mel Gibson and Dame Edna Everage and all sorts. And it's the power of the printed word that's so extraordinary. So, I mean, several decades later, there's nothing left of my TV show, no videos or anything, but in the Australian National Library and various university libraries, there's all 80 issues of Theatre Australia magazine. So that was an interesting thing too, that kind of stored itself up in my head. Then I went back to England and I worked in TV, writing and producing television series. And then I kind of did a strange sidestep and moved into work-life balance, which was a whole new area at the time. And that was when I had my first book published, one on work-life balance for individuals and one on work-life balance for organizations. So that was, again, that sort of turned me into an expert on the subject. And I mean, I had been working as a researcher and behind the scenes, but this kind of made me a very well thought of consultant. So I consulted to companies like Microsoft and Virgin and big banks and government, and as well as small companies as well, about sort of advocating for work-life balance, maybe particularly for women, at a time when it wasn't really, mainstream. And then I went back into TV, and then I wrote 3 novels, and then I went back into publishing and started Rethink Press. What actually happened was that I wrote a self-help book, got it published by a publisher who turned out to live sort of half an hour away from me, which I didn't actually know at the time. And he, Joe, my now business partner, published business books written by entrepreneur authors who might be coaches or consultants or business owners. And so I worked with him for a time as his commissioning editor, and then we together started up Rethink Press, which is a different business model, also publishing entrepreneur authors, but with what's called a hybrid business model. So it's for authors who are not necessarily looking for massive retail sales of their book, because they may have a very niche market. Mm-hmm. So the business model is that they pay for the publishing package, so the editing and the book cover design and the interior design and the publishing and all the sort of everything that a traditional publisher does, and then we publish the book for them. And what they do is they use the book much more as a business card, as an authority piece, and they will get the return on their investment through increased clients, being able to charge higher prices, speaking gigs and their visibility, rather than thinking, oh, I must make my book a bestseller because I've got to make money from the sales of the book. So that's the Rethink Press. I'm also the published mentor of a company called Dent Global, who runs the Key Person of Influence program for entrepreneurs in both Australia and the UK, and in fact in America and Singapore too. So through that, I mentor literally hundreds of entrepreneurs every year to plan and write their business books, and then we publish a lot of them through Rethink Press. In 2017, just to bring you up to date, finally, I started the business. So I founded the Business Book Awards, which are awards for, obviously for business books, but there really was nothing catering to this area of publishing and writing. So we've had the first Business Book Awards, and they were fantastic. We got 150 entries. It's mainly UK published books with an international category. And it just went incredibly well, and people were absolutely thrilled by it. But, and I have to say, our winners, we had 11 winners in different categories, and they were all absolutely wonderful, superb books. But what I did not expect was that they were all white male authors. So I had got together a judging panel of 10 women and 10 men. We had a woman head judge. She and I put together the categories and the criteria, and we thought we'd done everything absolutely, fairly and equitably. But it didn't work out that way. So we had to have a big think about what had gone wrong. I mean, I'm not saying there was anything wrong with the books that won the awards. They were fabulous, but it can't be right that that only men can write award-winning level business books. So we changed some of the categories, added some. For this year, we've added an award for an exceptional book by a woman. I've done a lot of research, and I've ended up writing a book called A Book of One's Own, a manifesto for women to share their experience and make a difference, which is all about the reasons women don't write women write fewer business books than men. Actually, there are fewer women starting businesses, so that's one reason, and running businesses. But also, there's a lot of unconscious bias out there. And people do not take women as seriously as they take men. And that's not just men, that's women and men. We all have this unconscious bias. And so my mission now is to get more women to write their business books. So that's where I am at the moment, Antonella.
That's wonderful. Now, whether you're a woman or not, thinking about starting starting to write a book is intimidating for a lot of people. You're, of course, a very experienced writer. What if you're a kind of a person that you're fence sitting and you just don't think that maybe you have the literary skills to put together a book? Do you coach people through that?
Yes, absolutely. We coach people at Rethink Press. We have a coaching program, if you like, so we help people. I mean, one of the first things to say is, if you haven't done it before, or even if you have, that the really important thing a lot of people don't realize is to plan and structure your book before you even start writing anything. So that's where you have to begin. And I think lots of people just think, oh, I've got this idea in my head, I know what I'm going to write, more or less, I'll just go for it. And then they start writing and it all goes a bit pear-shaped, and they leave it. So, we often talk about the one-page book, the book that people started and never finished. And that's a lot to do with not having planned properly first. So that's the first tip. But also there are now lots of professionals out there who can help. So book coaches, mentors, ghostwriters, absolutely nothing wrong with getting your book ghostwritten. We have a service that does that for people. If you have, if you've been in your area of work for, let's say 3 years, and you've had clients and you've got good results, you have the content for a good book. And it's, talking to your niche. It's not necessarily, as I said, it's not necessarily important for it to be a bestseller or go out to the world, but just to talk to people who are your potential clients, then you've definitely got the material there.
Mm-hmm. And it's also, of course, so important because it does give you that extra level of credibility, and of course gives other people a chance to kind of catch up on what you're all about, to see if they're the type of person that you would like to work with and the kind of content that you can create.
Exactly. It's all about exactly that. It's showing people how you do, what, as you say, exactly what kind of person you are, and then that actually is helpful, because if you're not the right kind of person for someone, then you're vetting your potential clients in advance. So you don't have to go through talking to people who aren't right for you as well. So yeah,
and it seems like the process does not have to be really daunting or intimidating. Of course, there's a lot of work put in, but I think one of the biggest kind of issues is that a lot of people think, well, I'm not a good enough writer to write a book that's for professional authors. That's not kind of my area of expertise. It sounds like it would be very, very difficult to kind of take that step. It's almost like a big leap of faith in your own ability, and it's something that may be very different from what you do day to day.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no reason why anyone who runs a business or is an entrepreneur or does something else with, that's their area of expertise should be a good writer as well. And that's why, there are lots of professionals there to help you. I mean, one thing you should never do is publish a book that hasn't had a professional edit, no matter how good a writer you are. And, I've had 12 books published, and every time my manuscripts are edited, the editor sees things that I don't. So, and an editor can take a really, not necessarily brilliantly written manuscript and turn it into a really polished and great book. So, that you don't have to worry about not being a great writer yourself. You can also, use, as I say, someone who's a ghostwriter and takes your content and turns it into a book. So it's not something to panic about at all. There are lots of different ways of getting your content into the form of a book. And lots of people out there who can help you do that.
Now, you've mentioned before that there are some reasons why women might not be as assertive with kind of taking this task upon themselves. Have you noticed that fairly consistently, or are we getting better?
We probably are getting better. It is partly to do with the actual the number of women who are actually starting and running their own businesses as well. I think that what happens is that women tend to, and this is obviously a generalization, women tend to think smaller than men. So they're more likely to say they're running a business to fit around their lifestyle and for flexibility, while men will say, I'm starting a business because I want to absolutely smash it and be number one out there and be a winner. But I did, for my book, I did a survey and interviews with 50 women authors of business books. And I was kind of shocked but not surprised, I suppose, to find that the reasons that they said they thought women did not write their books as easily or as often as men is that we are much more we have less confidence in our knowledge and our abilities. So, I think we all know the kind of possibly apocryphal statistics that, if a man can do 60% of a job, he'll apply for it. And if a woman can't do 20% of a job, she won't apply for it. So we are more worried that we need to do everything right. We have less self-confidence. We have imposter syndrome frequently. We also are very scared of, it seems, of criticism and judgment. So putting our heads above the parapet and saying, look, these are my views and this is what I think, is something that women worry about more than men. And then we have issues with time and money. So women are more likely to be worried about taking time away from their families and their businesses than men are, and also actually having the funds to, because it does take a bit of time. You may, while you're writing your book, have to stop doing or do less of something else, and that's that really is why fewer women are writing their business book, according to the 50 that I have spoken to and interviewed.
Mm-hmm. Now, this, of course, ties back into the work-life balance issue that you were discussing before. What would be your kind of number one piece of solid advice for somebody who's trying to find that work-life balance? Is that even a thing that can be done? Like right now, everybody's so accessible and it's so difficult to kind of put the boundaries, especially if you're passionate about your business. How do you juggle it all?
Well, I think what you have to do is, as a woman particularly, you can turn those worries on their head and say things like, not who is going to lose out if I write my book, but who is going to lose out if I don't write my book. So it's you're doing this, you set it as a project that is for you, your business, and the people who depend on your business. So that might be employees or colleagues, but also your family. But also think about it as, it's one thing that is kind of gender free is the expertise and the authority that comes with being a published author. And I think that the more women who can get that respect as a published author adds to the whole sum of respect for women in general. So I think you have to position your project, your book project, as something that really needs to be done. And, you are not selfish in taking the time away from your business or your family to write the book, you are selfish if you don't. So you have to kind of use your female kind of worries to actually think this is something that has to be done.
Direct them towards something productive.
Exactly, that's right. And in terms of the work-life balance bit, chunk everything down into small, into small part projects, small goals. So do the planning first. Spend a lot of time in your own head. I mean, we are good at, I know this is a contested term and people say you can't multitask, but we do, whatever it is, we do lots of things at once. So we're kind of good at often letting our brains, our kind of subconscious, work on ideas while we're busy, doing other stuff, especially the mundane houseworky type stuff. So do that. It's called composting. Let your brain kind of run away with ideas for your book, come up with ideas without consciously thinking about it. And that could take, some weeks or months. But then, sit down and write a really solid plan and possibly do that bit with somebody else, a professional, to get that in place. And that, that might take you a day or a few hours to do. But then for the writing, what works for an awful lot of people is to take an hour out of your day and just write for that hour every day. Get into a habit of doing it. And a lot of people I mentor say the best thing for them is to get up an hour early. Don't do anything. Don't even shower or look at your email or anything like that. And just spend the first hour of your day writing. And then
don't get your mind contaminated with other tasks.
Exactly. And I reckon that once you're in that habit, and it doesn't matter how good or bad the writing is, just get it out there on the page. You can write 1,000 words in an hour when you get into the habit. It comes more and more quickly. So if you did that for 5 days a week for 6 weeks, you've got a 30,000 word book. And that's all you need for a business book, 30 to 40,000 words. So it's doable.
Yeah, no, it's sounds like a massive undertaking, but with proper guidance and commitment, anything's doable, right? Is there anybody that might be considering this that you might say, no, now's not a good time to do this, or maybe it's a bit early, or maybe it's not the right kind of thing for you, or do you think that most entrepreneurs would benefit from it at sharing any type of learning experience?
I think if you've only just started what you're doing, you either have to think, I do know, I do have the knowledge and the expertise here, and I'm going to build my business on the book. Or you say, I need to do this for a couple of years before I'm really ready to write the book. But in the meantime, I'm going to write regular blog posts about what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. So that, in that way, you collect writing. You've got an archive that you can also then repurpose for your book. But I think if you're new to what you're doing, you need to take a bit of time to consolidate your experience, get clients or customers that you've worked with. One of the great things in a business book is to use case studies. So you're not kind of writing a marketing brochure saying how wonderful you are with client testimonials and things like that. But what you can do is give people really useful little on the ground examples of how what you're saying has worked. And using your clients as case studies is a great way to do that. But if you haven't had any clients,
a bit difficult to do then.
It's possibly a bit early to start, to start writing. Well, not necessarily to start writing, but to start thinking about publishing the book until you've got some really solid experience behind you. So that's, I think, the only thing I would say.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that advice. See, now now it's your passion about it is so contagious. Now I'm itching to write a book.
It's good. That's great. We'll talk later.
Now, speaking of books, I do pester all of my guests with sharing a book that they would like our audience to read. It does not have to be anything specifically about entrepreneurship, just any type of book that had a positive impact or any kind of influence on your life that you would recommend our audience to sit down and find the time to read.
Well, sure, yes. Oh gosh, now I've completely forgotten the name of it, and I had it in my head. So, I mean, one book I think is really helpful for all, from a business point of view, for all entrepreneurs, is Key Person of Influence by Daniel Priestley. Mm-hmm. But another book that I would absolutely recommend as a novel is oh gosh, now I really have lost it. That's ridiculous. It's by Naomi Alderton, and oh gosh, it's a really great novel, which just makes you really think about how we think about men and women, and I actually can't think of the name of it. Which is
it The Power?
It's The Power, yes.
The Power, yes.
The Power, which is so powerful. I've forgotten the name of it. Yeah, I know. I read that last year, and I just thought, wow, this is such a clever book. I don't usually do science fiction, but it's really, really strong. Have you read it?
No, I've been meaning to read it, but as soon as you mentioned the author's name, I'm like, oh, it's right on the tip of my tongue. That's actually on the list. But we all have those lists, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It is one.
No, that one's definitely on there. I'm glad to hear that it was a positive one.
Yeah, no, I certainly enjoyed it. It's a great book.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. And do you have any final words of advice that you would like to share for our audience? Anything that you want them left thinking about as we sort of get towards the end here?
Yeah, I think that there are some really strong reasons for whatever you do, whatever your passion is, to write about it. It's even if nobody else ever reads your manuscript, even if you don't publish it, it's a fantastic way to clarify what you do, to get absolute clarity on how you do what you do, to refine your processes, to just it's a really good piece of self-development. So I would say really think about writing, and then ideally publishing your book, because it's such a strong business asset if you work at all, if you have a business. I would really advise anybody to think about doing this as something that will really help them personally and help their business and, the wider world, because everybody who has got something to say should be getting it out there.
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree. I said it's almost hard for me mentally to think on track, to stay on track here talking to you, because right now my mind is racing. I'm getting all of these ideas because, like I said, of course, your passion is unmatched, and you're clearly unbelievably experienced in everything that you do. And we're going to make sure that all of your resources are available to our audience so that they can take advantage of being able to get in touch with you and ask you all sorts of questions. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise and for sharing your knowledge. You really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. It's been lovely talking to you, Antonella.
Yes, you as well.
Bye.
Hey Alphas, it's Dr. Antonella from Fierce and Flawless, the Female Project. I cannot wait to bring you more incredible stories and exceptional insights from women who made an impact. So join me on this journey. Subscribe and comment with nominations for guests you would like featured next. I want to deliver content that ignites a spark in you, so your feedback is extremely important to me. To connect with me and to get the resources mentioned in this episode, visit www.thefemaleproject.net or add me on Instagram at dr.antonella. Thank you for listening and stay tuned.